Hey, everybody, and welcome back. Thanks for staying with us, and welcome to another episode of AWS What's Next. My name is Gabe Hollenby. I'm a developer advocate here at Amazon Web Services, and today for this segment, I'm joined by Piyush. You want to introduce yourself, Piyush?
Yeah, thanks, Gabe. Thanks for having me. My name is Piyush Kundra. I'm a senior product manager here in the Amazon S3 team. Excited to be here and share some new features.
Awesome, thanks. And maybe we just start out, before we even get into what those new features are, for people who are new to AWS, they might not even know what Amazon S3 is, even though it's one of our most popular services. So can you just start with a quick overview of what is Amazon S3 so we can lay the groundwork for talking about the new exciting things?
Absolutely. Amazon S3, the simple storage service, is the industry-leading object storage for cloud.
Cool. And if we want to contextualize that even more, we can say object storage is a type of way of storing your data in the cloud, right? But you might be most familiar as a developer with something like file storage, where you think about like the file system that you have on your computer. Well, object storage is more like a key value store for object data, where you say, okay, I have a unique ID. I'm going to take any arbitrary amount of data. It's usually a file, but it could be some binary data. It could be a part of a file. It doesn't even matter. And you just associate IDs with that data, and that's how you read and write and get things out. Is that a good summary of it, Piyush?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks.
Cool. And object storage is definitely what you want to be concerned with using. When I say concerned with, I mean it's what you should be using for really scalable solutions, because that style of addressing storage by IDs is what lets you scale massively. And Amazon S3 gives you virtually unlimited cloud storage. So it's the way to go if you have lots of data and you need your applications to access it in the cloud.
Absolutely.
So with that out of the way, just a little bit more housekeeping. If you're watching this session and you have questions for us, give us a tweet. We'll be watching our tweet feed. The hashtag is AWS On Air, and the AWS On Air username on Twitter. So go ahead and send us your questions that way. And if we see any come through that we think we can do a good job answering for you, we'll do our best. So we have two things we want to cover in this segment. One is a pre-announcement that was shared on December 1st. So we'll go into a little bit more detail about that. And then we actually have a feature that was launched really recently, a few days ago, that we want to share as well. So let's start with the pre-announcement. What did we pre-announce recently, Piyush?
Thanks. Yeah, we pre-announced on December 1st that we will be supporting AWS PrivateLink for S3 that would enable customers to establish private connectivity to S3 from their VPC or on-premises, or even from a different AWS region.
Okay. And maybe we talk a bit more about why are we launching this? AWS PrivateLink for Amazon S3. PrivateLink exists for a number of services, but why are we launching this for Amazon S3?
Yeah, absolutely. We've heard from many customers that they want to connect their on-premises applications with S3 without using public IPs or going over the internet. AWS PrivateLink for S3 provides a private endpoint within customers' secure virtual network to allow access from on-premises or from a different AWS region using private IPs. And this significantly improves the network architecture for our customers to connect with S3, since they no longer need to configure firewall rules, internet gateway, or manage proxies in their VPC. So this is a great win for our customers.
Okay. Now, I think customers might be a little confused because, if they're new to things, because we use different terms here. Some places on our documentation, you'll see this concept referred to as interface endpoints, and some places we say private link. Now, these are different, but they're related terms. They operate in the same space. So can you unpack this a bit more for our customers? I want to make sure everybody understands the difference.
Yes, definitely. So AWS PrivateLink is the service that connects the VPC to AWS services over the Amazon network. Interface endpoints are the way to connect to that service, or it's the face of how you access that AWS PrivateLink service. They are assigned private IPs, and they can be accessed directly from either VPC or on-premises, or even from a different AWS region.
Okay. And how does it actually work? Can you go into a little bit of detail on what the moving parts are?
Yeah, great. So with PrivateLink for S3, customers would be able to provision interface VPC endpoints for S3 within their virtual private cloud, or VPC, to connect on-premises applications directly with S3, either over AWS Direct Connect or AWS VPN. Interface endpoints are highly scalable and available. Customers can create one or more interface endpoints across different availability zones and subnets. And requests to these endpoints are automatically routed to S3 over the Amazon network, or different AWS services if they're using interface endpoints for other AWS services.
Okay. Now, we have PrivateLink, Gateway Endpoint. These are both secure options, right? So how can you help contextualize this a bit more? What does PrivateLink bring to the table that's different from what the Gateway Endpoint already had that we offer?
Yeah. So with the launch of AWS PrivateLink for S3, there will be two types of VPC endpoints that customer can use: the existing gateway type and the new interface type. As you mentioned, both endpoints provide access to S3 over Amazon network, so your network traffic never leaves our Amazon network. Gateway endpoints are a gateway that gets specified in the routing table in your VPC, and every request to S3 within the VPC then gets routed over Amazon network through the gateway endpoint. So think of gateway endpoints as a way to route requests to S3 from your VPC over Amazon network. Interface endpoints extend that functionality by giving you a private IP address to access S3 over Amazon network. And that interface endpoints can be accessed directly from VPC or outside of the VPC, for example, on-premises applications, or if you have applications from a different AWS region. Gateway endpoints are not billed, whereas interface endpoints are billed a low per gigabyte of data processed and a low per hour per endpoint fee as well.
Okay, so again, as you said, it's important to note both cases. Your network is remaining on your traffic is remaining on the Amazon network.
Yes.
And I like how you also called out the cost difference, because this, as we said, gateway endpoints is something that exists today. I see a lot of customers use this feature and have been using this feature for cases where you've got resources in private subnets, right? And like EC2 instances in a private subnet in your virtual private cloud, and those EC2 instances need to talk to S3 to read and write, data. You want that traffic to. You don't need to necessarily go over a NAT gateway. So if you didn't use a gateway endpoint for this use case, then those EC2 instances in the private subnet would need to have a NAT gateway in the private subnet or in the VPC that they can talk through in order to communicate, with the outside world, like to make an S3 service call. So what the gateway endpoint lets you do is, literally free of charge, route that traffic. As you said, it's a routing capability. So route that traffic from those private subnets through Amazon's network to S3, so you don't need the NAT gateway. And that's nice, and that customers save a lot of money with that type of configuration, because you're not paying for a NAT gateway if that was the only reason why you needed one. And NAT gateways have a monthly charge, and they charge for the amount of traffic that goes through them. So pro tip, if you're not doing this already, that feature has been available for a long time. So you should look into using gateway endpoint. But as you've said, with this new capability with interface endpoints with PrivateLink, that gives you a different way to access your data with a private IP, which some use cases might warrant. So maybe you can go into detail a bit more about that. Like, when should I use the gateway endpoint? When should I use the interface endpoint?
Absolutely. So interface endpoints for S3 would be compatible with the gateway endpoints. And depending on workloads or the use case for customers, they can either migrate their applications from the gateway type endpoint to this new interface endpoint, or even use both of the endpoints in the same VPC together, such that their in-VPC configuration with gateway endpoint remains the same, and they continue sending the in-VPC traffic with the gateway endpoint, and then the on-premises traffic with this new interface endpoint. It's a great option to provide more flexibility and add more options for customers to access S3 in different ways, depending on what their use case is.
That makes a lot of sense to me, as you were saying before. The on-prem use case for the interface endpoint, I think that's where we're going to see most customers bringing this to bear. Now, I know there's something, endpoint policies are a thing. Are the interface endpoints going to support these endpoint policies?
Absolutely, yes. So interface endpoint would support our endpoint policies in the same way that we do today with the gateway type endpoints. Endpoint policies are a great way to add defense in depth, to add additional access control in your network layer, in addition to the resource policies, let's say bucket policy or IAM policies. You can also now use interface endpoint with endpoint policies to control access to who can access this endpoint and what resources can be accessed from this endpoint as well. So the endpoint policies are supported the same way as gateway endpoint, and they're the great way to add additional access control layers in your network configuration.
Nice. And we have a feature in Amazon S3 called access points, S3 access points. So can I use this new private link capability for Amazon S3 to access the access points in S3?
Yes. So think of PrivateLink as just another way to access S3. All the resources in S3, whether it's bucket or access points and other APIs that we support, would continue to work with the AWS PrivateLink. It's just that now you're using a private IP-based interface endpoint to access S3.
Okay, cool. So before we move on to the other feature that was actually launched recently, just to wrap up and confirm on PrivateLink for S3, it's something we've announced, but it's not yet available for customers, right?
Correct. We're very excited to see a lot of interest from our customers and working very hard to enable this and launch this as soon as possible.
Okay, and then for customers who are excited to learn more about this coming capability for S3 with PrivateLink, where can they go to learn more?
Yeah, as we mentioned, PrivateLink is an existing services. Customers use it to access other AWS services. So we have our product page and documentation that talks about how interface endpoints work. Interface endpoints for S3 or PrivateLink for S3 would work in similar ways, and customers can read about the interface endpoints today going to our documentation and product page.
Cool. Just the last thing I want to clarify on this before we move on to the other launch is we also just now we're speaking about the gateway endpoints. So that is something that you can use today. So if you liked the bit about the routing, and saving money with private resources needing to talk to S3, that is already available today. So if that also is interesting to you, just go look for gateway endpoints in the S3 documentation.
Yeah, gateway endpoint.
Yeah, and the VPC documentation might have some stuff about it too.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, let's move on to something we actually have launched, and this is a really neat feature that I'm pretty sure it's called S3 Bucket Keys. So this is a new security feature we launched. What can you tell us about it? What is an Amazon S3 Bucket Key?
Yeah, so Amazon S3 Bucket Keys, we launched on 1st of December. Very excited about this new feature for our customers. Amazon S3 Bucket Keys reduce the request cost from Amazon S3 server-side encryption with AWS Key Management Service by up to 99% by decreasing the request traffic from S3 to KMS. With a few clicks in the management console, and no changes to the client applications, customers can configure their bucket to use this new S3 bucket key for their server-side encryption.
Okay, and just to lay some groundwork, KMS, our Key Management Service, it's a really popular choice for managing encryption keys, and it has a lot of tight integration with many AWS services that will do encryption without you needing to do the work yourself. So that tight coupling or that tight integration means that services like Amazon S3 today already could use keys stored in our KMS service to encrypt the data in your buckets. But again, there used to be a lot of traffic back and forth between S3 and KMS if you had a lot of objects in your bucket that you were encrypting and decrypting. And so this is an optimization for that, right? So how does an S3 bucket key work?
Yeah, that's a great point. And with the S3 bucket keys, instead of using an individual KMS key for each KMS encrypted object, a bucket level key is generated by KMS. S3 uses this bucket key to create unique data keys for encrypting new objects in your bucket, which avoids the need for additional KMS requests to complete encryption operations. This results in reduction of request traffic from S3 to KMS, and it's a great option for customers, especially with the use cases for data lakes on S3.
Okay, and why should I use it?
Yeah, you should use S3 bucket key to reduce the cost of using server-side encryption KMS or key management service in S3. S3 bucket keys reduce the cost of KMS for workloads that execute high volume of read and write requests against objects in an S3 bucket. As a result, as I mentioned, customers with data lakes or with millions or even billions of objects making read and write requests would be able to expand their data lakes with a fraction of their KMS cost.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So it's really about this is a new feature for reducing cost, and it's an optimization security feature there. So how do I get started with S3 bucket keys?
Yeah, to get started, we can just navigate to the S3 management console in the buckets property page under the encryption tile, and you'll see an option for enabling or turning on S3 bucket key. Once that option is turned on, any new object will be encrypted using this S3 bucket key. Customers can also turn S3 bucket keys on using AWS CLI or SDK. A great feature is that the customers don't have to update their client applications to be able to use S3 bucket keys.
Yeah, and that's actually a nice distinction, because if you haven't really used encryption features in S3 with KMS before, or with this new bucket key feature, it's all seamless to you if you use the options where you're not managing the keys yourself and doing encryption client side, and that's nice. And that means even with this new feature, all the clients, there's no code that needs to change there. This is something that the S3 service takes care of doing for you, which of course makes your life easier. Now. Exactly. I lost my train of thought here. What was I going to say? Oh yeah, I like that you pointed out too that the CLI and the SDKs also let you turn this feature on or off. It's it's, as with almost everything in AWS, if you can do it in the console, you can also do it in the APIs with SDK or the CLI. Now, one minor thing that you mentioned just now about turning this on is for new objects. That once the feature is enabled, it's only going to take effect for new objects that land in that bucket. Which means if you've already got a big bucket with a lot of stuff in it, using the old world, and you want to switch to bucket key, I'm guessing that probably what you're going to have to do is issue a copy operation to have those objects get recreated. Does that make sense? Is that right? Am I on the right train of thought here?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you rewrite or do a put operation on existing objects that were not previously encrypted with S3 bucket keys, and you have the S3 bucket key enabled for that bucket, these objects would now be encrypted using the S3 bucket key. Also,
sweet.
In addition to
okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And so, besides the cost optimization that can happen here, are there any charges for using an S3 bucket key feature?
No, there is no additional charge to use S3 bucket key. In fact, customers would experience cost reduction of up to 99% in the request cost from S3 to KMS. Okay.
And then back to this previous point, I guess, where we were talking about how some objects, may be encrypted with a bucket key and some won't. If you already had some data in the bucket before you turn the feature on, how can I tell what objects in the bucket are using an S3 bucket key once I have that feature enabled?
Yeah, if an object was encrypted with the S3 bucket key, it would be available in the object parameters and metadata. You will be able to see that in the S3 management console or from CLI or SDK as well.
Cool. And so for viewers who are maybe unfamiliar with S3, this is just a nice thing to know about. And in addition to the data that you store at a particular key value, right, for this object storage, there's also metadata that you can attach on to objects. And S3 itself provides several pieces of metadata that are service specific beyond your ability to add your own metadata to objects too. So this is just a new piece of metadata that's now returned as part of the metadata payload with your objects.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay. We have a little bit more time. Let me just ask you a few more questions before we wrap up. If I'm going to enable S3 bucket keys, what changes should I be aware of, or what should I be careful on?
Yeah, we recommend customers to adopt S3 bucket key to lower their key management server-side encryption with key management service request costs. There are two things to consider when turning on S3 bucket key. First, if you're using IAM policies or KMS key policies as the encryption context to control access to your AWS KMS key, you will need to update the encryption context to use the bucket level ARN instead of the object level ARN. And with ARN, I mean Amazon resource name. Second thing you would observe when you turn on S3 bucket key, customers will observe fewer CloudTrail events for KMS encrypted objects, and that the KMS CloudTrail events will reflect bucket level attributes in the encryption context instead of the object level attributes.
Okay, and for customers who are just not aware, CloudTrail is a super cool feature that you can turn on inside your VPCs, and what it lets you do is it will log. Or it's not even, sorry, I misspoke. It's not part of the VPC so much. That's VPC Flow Logs. CloudTrail is a feature you can turn on in your account, and if you turn it on, it will log all of, or almost all, many of the requests for all the API actions that are taking place in your account, right, against the resources in your account. It's an amazing way to gain insight into, if you're wondering what is as much intel as is easy for me to gather on all the moving parts, what calls are being made where. It's all, it all happens with API calls in AWS, and you can see a lot of that data by turning on CloudTrail. So if you're not aware of it, go learn more about CloudTrail. It's an amazing feature and service capability that I think more customers should be using if they're not aware of it already.
Yeah. On the topic of VPC Flow Logs, I just want to mention that our PrivateLink service interface endpoint for S3 would support VPC Flow Logs as well. So that's a great point you brought up. I just wanted to connect the dots with PrivateLink and VPC Flow Logs.
Nice. And for those of you who don't know what a VPC Flow Log is, inside your virtual private clouds, right, which are these, like isolated virtual networks, you may want to understand greater insight into how the traffic is flowing, right? A flow log, it's a network traffic flow log. So that's a feature you can turn on in your VPCs as well. So nice to know that the PrivateLink for S3 is going to support writing data to that as well.
It's a great way to audit your network. Yeah. Network traffic.
Exactly. Yep. For security conscious, customers, which should be all of you, security is job zero. It's a feature that makes them happy. So, okay, just checking time. I think we're right where we want to be in terms of making sure we have time for the next session to start. So, just to wrap up again, if you want to learn more about S3 Bucket Key, I know that we have a what's new announcement about that, on the what's new listing in our website. Is there anywhere else you want people to go learn more about S3 Bucket Keys?
Yeah, we have a S3 Bucket Key documentation available in the S3 user guide as well. So I encourage customers to read about S3 Bucket Keys in our documentation.
And I'm just checking my notes. I see we also have a blog post about it. So in addition to the what's new announcement, there's a corresponding blog post that goes into more detail. So be sure to check that out if you want to know even more beyond what we were able to cover in this segment. So cool. Thank you so much for joining me, Piyush. I had a lot of fun with this. I hope the customers and all the viewers out there got something good out of this. Thanks for tuning in, all you customers. Please stay with us. We have lots more exciting content coming for all of reInvent over the next couple weeks. And I'll see you back here myself tomorrow for another segment. And until then, build on, and we'll see you then. Thanks, Piyush.
Thank you, Gabe.